Join us as we speak with a whole host of expert navigators through the land of parenting. They'll offer you stories, validation, and a few directions to help you find your way if you're feeling a little lost. Our children need so much support, and to support them in this way, we need a map for the sometimes bumpy terrain of parenting. And when things inevitably change, we need a new map. A whole bunch of maps so that we can find our way with mindfulness, attunement, play, and self-care. Jo Wiese is a wellbeing and parenting consultant. As a parenting facilitator, she has the pleasure of supporting parents through programs such as Circle of Security Parenting, Dads Tuning Into Kids, and Tuning Into Kids. Jo has 30 years of experience in psychology, positive psychology and wellbeing science, and worked in her early career as a school counsellor supporting children and young people in schools. And I have known Jo for many years, since the days when she was a school psychologist in the country town we both lived in. Jo has a passion for wellbeing science, including mindfulness. She's worked for many years training teachers and parents in topics and skills related to wellbeing science, including how to develop a whole school or whole family approach to mindfulness. She's also mother to 3 adult children. Welcome, Jo.
Thank you, Belinda. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So I would love to ask, first of all, if you will share a bit more about yourself. So how you got to this point and why you're passionate. I think you're going to focus on mindfulness. Is that right?
Yes.
Why you're passionate about mindfulness and what it offers, I guess, to parents. We'll get to that. But, yeah, more about you to start with.
Yeah, well, I think my bio sort of covered everything. I have this deep passion about wellbeing science and living it myself. I love sort of finding out about what are some evidence-based tools and applying it to myself and then sharing it with others. So I've always done that through my career, whether it's been kids I've been working with or sort of later in my career, teachers, educators, and parents. So got this real drive to, bring wellbeing science to people.
Beautiful. So this podcast is called Maps for Parents. So can you share a story about a map or a set of ideas that you've found helpful for yourself or the parents you work with, particularly when it starts to feel overwhelming?
Well, I guess my story is kind of also my story as to why I am passionate about mindfulness. So I learnt about meditation mindfulness many, many years ago, before there was any sort of science or perhaps available science about the benefits. And I learned it when I was at uni, just as something fun to do, how to meditate. But it wasn't until a really difficult time in my own life when I came to really see its benefits personally. So for me, I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I was juggling sort of the normal things that you juggle. Career and children and parenting. But at that stage, I was diagnosed with cancer. So it was a really, really big thing, obviously, to have that thrown into the mix. And I found that I really drew on that skill or that technique of mindfulness really strongly during that period of my life. So it was obviously really difficult, but I started meditating every day, and that was so important for that whole time of my life. And then ever since, I've had this regular meditation practice. So for me, it was I discovered its real benefits at a crisis point, but then have continued to just see its benefits moving forward. So for me, I personally have seen the benefits, and then I guess that's why I'm passionate with sharing it with others.
And I'm curious, I'm thinking for someone who's never had any experience of meditation, hearing about that massive, to be honest, parenting a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old is really massive enough. And then if you throw in life or death at that point as well, and they're thinking, how does sitting still help? So I'm wondering about maybe a description of what your meditation looked like, what it was, and drawing a line between those two.
And that's where I guess my passion really steps up, because there's all these different definitions and beliefs and understandings about mindfulness and meditation. And I think if I was listening to this as a parent of young children, I'd be thinking, well, I have to do another thing on top of my really busy day. Yeah. So that's where I love to share what a few different definitions of mindfulness and where it helps as a parent. So one particular definition I love, and I'll add the video in the show notes, comes from a video called something like "Why Mindfulness is a Superpower." And it's Dan Harris, who's written a few books, but he talks about mindfulness being the ability to know what's going on in your mind or in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. And I love that definition.
Yes, nice.
And he uses this little story that I think parents can relate to. So it says, imagine you're driving along in the car with your kids in the back of the car and someone cuts in front of you in traffic. And, what's your first thought or first reaction? Well, you might notice, my chest is getting tighter, my breathing's getting faster, my ears are burning. I'm having these cascade of self-righteous thoughts, he says. But do you actually inhabit those thoughts? Do you actually jump out of the car with your kids in the back of the car and go screaming down the street yelling at this person? Well, hopefully not. Hopefully in that moment you're able to notice I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm, having all of these thoughts, but I'm not actually becoming those thoughts. And in that moment of mindfulness, you're able to choose to perhaps take some deep breaths, perhaps, keep those, not getting run away with those thoughts, and you're able to mindfully continue driving perhaps. And that's what I love about it. It's this ability to, meditation for me is training that skill of mindfulness. And again, that's where I want to kind of differentiate. So again, some people might think, well, I don't have time to sit, sort of my eyes closed, cross-legged. Why would I have the time? Why is that a benefit for me? So I guess anything that trains that skill to know what's going on in your head in any given moment without getting carried away with it, anything that can train that skill, well, one is meditation, yes, but what is meditation? Meditation, it's a bit like going to the gym. When you go to the gym, you lift weights to strengthen your muscles. Meditation is a bit like that. You sit and with or without your eyes closed, and when your mind wanders, and I promise you, your mind will wander. This morning when I was meditating, my mind wandered. When your mind wanders and you notice it and you bring it back, that's like lifting a weight at the gym, and then your mind wanders again and you bring it back, and that's like lifting another weight at the gym. You're training that muscle so that when you're in your everyday life and your child says something, let's imagine your child, it's the end of the day and kids come home from school, one of your kids, how was school today? Fine, he says in a cross voice, and then, what are you having to eat? Nothing. And, perhaps goes into his room, and slams the door. Now, in that moment, a million things could be going through your mind. You could get caught away, run away with the thought, well, why me? Why have I got a child that's always angry? And then we go through that, what happens with that thought. Perhaps it's like, what's wrong with him? He's always like that. And as parents, sometimes we run away with these future thoughts. My child's going to turn out to be an adult that, how's he going to keep a job if he's, always angry and cranky all the time? How's he going to find a life partner? And we can get caught up with those kind of thoughts. Or what about if we kind of just notice, okay, something's been triggered in me, I'm mindful that I'm feeling a bit angry at the moment, and then maybe we can actually separate the emotion in our child and their behaviour. So we're mindful of those thoughts, and we're mindful of not getting carried away with all those other thoughts, and perhaps going with a thought that's more helpful as a parent. So anything that trains that ability to know what's going on in your mind in any given moment without getting carried away with it, that's going to be beneficial in those hot moments. And the next thought is parents, well, again, I don't have time to meditate. But it doesn't have to be meditation to train that skill, traditional meditation. It can be just saying to yourself, every day when I brush my teeth, hopefully everyone listening does brush their teeth, I'm actually going to do it mindfully. And every time my mind wanders, I'm going to notice it and bring it back. You're still actually training that skill so that when you are in that hot seat and it's your kids in the back of the car and perhaps they're poking each other.
Or worse.
Yeah. Or worse. And perhaps it's your child slamming the door, but you're more likely to notice it and not get carried away with those thoughts that aren't so helpful. So I guess that for me is the bit the crucial bit that helps parents go, yeah, I can actually see that tool or technique.
Not just a little bit useful, but actually profoundly useful. I'm thinking another guest was talking about, Kelsey Olds was talking about in terms of our bodies and noticing things and actually verbalising them to our children. So in the same way, I wonder, we're going a bit off piste here, but is it helpful, do you think, to sort of say to your child even, I can feel my chest tightening and I'm getting a bit stressed here. I think I need to take a minute. I'm thinking that could be a really great role modelling for our kids to learn a little bit more about what's happening when we get stressed and how we can notice it and deal with it more helpfully than slamming doors maybe.
Definitely, because as a parent you are the role model and your children see, like I still remember, examples of where, and I talk about it when I'm running workshops with parents, but, one morning sort of getting ready for work and, it was all happening, trying to get 3 kids ready, trying to get myself ready, and a whole, what size carton of milk, whatever, 2-litre carton of milk just fell. I'm not sure why it fell, it just fell, and milk went everywhere. It went under the fridge, up the fridge, on my clothes, then the dog's in the mix, the kid's in the mix. I'm thinking I'm having to get changed. And just for that moment, seeing one of my kids just look at me and that look of, how's mum going to react? What's the right thing to react? And in that split-second moment, I was able to be mindful of where my mind was about to go and perhaps was already going, like, I haven't got time to get changed and remake the lunches and get the dog who shouldn't be licking milk. And in that moment, I just went, and laughed about it. Yeah. And that message was about, in that one split-second moment, I know that I gave my children, I modelled to my children a different way of being, that it was, we can laugh about spilt milk. And yes, it is an absolute inconvenience to have to go and get change, but in that split second, I can model a different way of being. And sure, I was doing some deep breathing to calm myself down, but that modelling was just so important, and I really remember that moment clearly.
Yeah, thinking in those moments, there's sometimes a little bit of fake it till you make it as well, isn't there?
Definitely.
Hold it together. But even that's amazing, rather than that reactivity that is so easy to bring to those hard moments.
And something else I love to share with parents is, we talk about taking this deep breath, and it's kind of a bit of a throwaway comment. We might say to our kids, take a deep breath. We might say, model, I'm taking a deep breath. But for me, the science behind it, really, when I discovered the science behind what happens in that deep breath, again, it kind of really deepened my decision to continue using a deep breath to calm myself. So this idea that during the stress response is really just the brain's generic response to respond to a threat. So our brain believes that there's a threat and it goes, there's a threat. I need to send a message to the rest of my brain to prepare my body to respond to this threat. And our brain doesn't know the difference between a real or perceived threat.
Yeah, spilled milk or a tiger.
Spilled milk or a tiger, exactly. So what happens during that stress response? So we'll take the spilt milk. My body's preparing me to respond. So my breathing starts to increase because I need to get oxygen to my brain so I can focus in on this threat. My heart rate increases because I need to pump blood to my muscles to respond again, to fight or freeze or run away. So all of these things are happening real time because our brain's just responding how it thinks it needs to respond. But by taking long, slow out breaths during the stress response, what is actually happening, so when you take a long, slow out breath, so your heart's beating fast during the stress response, on that long, slow out breath, what actually happens is your diaphragm moves up as you're breathing out really slowly in that long out breath. When your diaphragm moves up, it actually gives your heart less space. When your heart has got less space, it sends a message to your brain to slow down your heart rate, which I find incredible. So that mindful breathing actually helps to slow our heart rate and actually helps to reduce the cortisol in our body, or to help clear the cortisol in our body. So that's the science behind why it works. But I think just knowing that science can really help, I guess, to know, wow, I'm actually helping my body to calm down. So in that stress response, perhaps we have actually started to panic over the spilt milk, and we've actually started to go, But if we can catch ourselves, again, that definition, mindfulness is the ability to know what's going on in your head in any given moment and not get carried away with it. Instead of going down that path of,
it's the end of the world. Yeah.
End of the world. I can't believe this has happened to me, and panic. You can take those deep breaths and you can actually begin to calm the stress response, and also model to your children how to calm their stress response. So it's so powerful, so really, really powerful.
Really practically useful. So if parents listening in are feeling a bit lost, because I know there was a time when that wasn't just a one-shot deal in any given day, that was like 50 times a day, felt like that moment of just almost like pure pain. You're just like, oh no, I can't deal with, this hard moment one more time, and yet I'm staring down a whole day lined up of this. So if parents are feeling like that, like it's just so much, it's so overwhelming, and they need a map or a true north point right now, what's an actionable step? I mean, you have given lots of ideas there, but I'm just wondering if there's a sort of something that you think is particularly to come to the top of the pile. Yeah.
I guess it builds on from that. And for me, it's self-compassion. So self-compassion is treating yourself how you treat a friend. So if your friend said to you, your example, this is 50 times a day, there's spilt milk everywhere, I'm really struggling, I've lost it at my kids today. I can imagine as a friend, you'd say to your friend, wow, that's really hard. I struggle as well. That is really hard. So many of us as parents are struggling. I'm here for you. But how often do we say that to ourselves? How often do we acknowledge that it's hard? We acknowledge that other parents also struggle as well. And how often do we give ourselves that kindness? And there's so much research into self-compassion. Just those 3 steps. So mindfulness, acknowledging that it's difficult. Common humanity, which is acknowledging that other people, other parents struggle as well. And that 3rd step, which is kindness, actually speaking kindly to yourself. And I want to share a story of one of the key researchers in the field of self-compassion, sharing it how she used that exact approach of self-compassion with her neurodivergent child, if you're happy for me to share that.
Yep, love to hear it.
I want to use it in her words because it's so really powerful. So this is Christian Neff, who's one of the key researchers in self-compassion, and her child is neurodivergent. Christian, was on a transatlantic flight with my son, Rowan, and she's written a few books about Rowan. For some reason, just at the moment when they dimmed the lights in the cabin and the passengers hoped to get some sleep, Rowan lost it. A full-on screaming, flailing tantrum. I can imagine most parents are relating to this already. He was about 5 years old at the time. I remember feeling like every person on the plane was looking at me. What's wrong with that kid? He's too old to be acting like this. What's wrong with that mother? Why can't she control her child? At a loss for what to do, I thought I would take Rowan to the toilet and let him scream there, and hopefully his cries will be muffled. No luck. Occupied. So I sat down with Rowan outside the toilet in the little cubicle of space we had. I knew I had no choice but to give myself compassion. I breathed in compassion for myself, put my hand on my heart, and silently supported myself. This is so hard for you, my darling, she called herself. I'm so sorry this is happening. It will be okay. It will pass. I made sure Rowan was safe, but 95% of my attention was focused on soothing and comforting myself. Then I observed something that I often observe in Rowan. As I calmed down, he calmed down. I had learned that in those moments when I forgot my self-compassion practice and became agitated, Rowan would get more agitated. But when I gave myself compassion for the pain of the situation, Rowan would become more peaceful. He was resonating with my emotions just as much as I was resonating with his. by tending to my own feelings of overwhelm first. Moreover, I gained the stability needed to be fully there for Rowan and to love and support him unconditionally despite the difficulty. I quickly learned that practicing self-compassion, entering a state of loving, connected presence in the midst of suffering was one of the most effective ways I could help Rowan as well as myself.
Wow. Yeah. That's a beautiful story and resonates really well with me. It wasn't until I did a lot of that kind of self-compassion work that I was able to. And it's interesting in terms of a body level. I used to call my son a barometer. A barometer for my state. And so, yeah, that idea that we're tuning into one another, and if we're going to be the emotional anchor and, you know, provide that grounding for them, we have to start there. Yeah, it's beautiful. So you said, just to recount that as a kind of a simple thing for parents, you said you start 3 steps: acknowledge.
Yeah, mindfulness, this is difficult.
So the reality of what's happening, this is really hard. And I love that she called herself darling.
Yeah,
I think that's really lovely to sort of hold ourselves with, oh, sweetheart, you're doing your best.
Yeah.
Common humanity.
Oh,
pretty much every parent who comes, do you find that every parent who comes to a workshop says, oh, I thought I was the only one. It helps so much to know that I'm not. Yeah, so definitely. Acknowledging that there are a lot of other people feeling the same way. And what was the third one?
Third one was kindness. So saying, so again, thinking back, what would I say to a friend? You know, I'd say, wow, that's really hard. I struggle as well. You know, other people, you know, other parents struggle like this as well. And then you'd say something really kind. I'm here for you. Or, you know, it's okay, I've got you back. So those 3 steps, are just so powerful. And we think that perhaps that's selfish, but that's what I love in Kristen's story, that it's, you know, she realised it was so important for her, but also so important for Rowan. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So we're coming towards the end. Is there anything else that you want to share with parents about mindfulness specifically and self-compassion?
Yeah, well, there's so many things I could talk forever. I guess, you know, again, getting back, I love Dr. Becky, and I often listen to her. Yeah, good insight. I often listen to her speaking or little Instagram reels. And I just, you know, again, getting back to that, you know, mindfulness is about knowing what's going on in your mind without your thoughts, without getting carried away by it. I love this idea that she talks about is that, you know, we learn to parent by being parented, and that parenting does take practice, definitely. And this idea that what comes naturally will be how we were parented. So she said, if you were brought up, an analogy she uses, if you were brought up, you know, speaking English in an English-speaking household, and you suddenly wanted to speak Mandarin to your children, you would have to practice that. So again, getting back to that mindfulness and the self-compassion, you know, if we find ourselves parenting in perhaps ways that we were parented and we want to do things differently, that self-compassion piece of, you know, this is coming up perhaps because it was, you know, what comes naturally to me, and it is tricky to learn a different way of being with our children. But the more we're mindful of a different way, and the more we give self-compassion to ourselves, the more we can actually learn different ways of being with our children. And it takes work, and it is hard, but it's so worth it. So I think, I guess, again, I could talk for another hour on the topic, but that perhaps was just one more piece, was just, that piece around being aware of what's going on in our mind, and perhaps we might be more likely, with the thoughts going through our mind, might be more aligned with how we're parented, and just some of that acknowledgement, awareness, through mindfulness.
We give ourselves a really hard time, don't we? And a lot of shame and guilt
definitely.
in there.
Yeah.
So I think that's a lovely reminder. You know, in terms of an analogy, we don't see babies shaming and guilting themselves as they're learning to walk.
Yeah.
if we're learning a different way, if we're choosing some different elements for parenting to how we were parented, with a full sort of acknowledgement and compassion for our parents, and
definitely
that everyone's doing their best with the tools and information that they've got, that one of the most helpful things we can do is offering that self-compassion. Yeah. Oh, lovely. So I am curious to hear about anything you want to share with those listening as we finish up. I believe you've got a podcast coming out yourself soon.
Yes, I'm excited to be launching a podcast called What's Fear Got to Do With It, which is, people's stories about, so we don't do any background research, and we just bring our guests in and ask them one question. Tell us about a challenge or an event in your life that's been significant and why it's been significant. And then it's just people's stories of, unpacking what's happened for them, and some of them unpack parenting moments. Many people unpack life-changing moments. So it's their sort of raw, unscripted story. And then we finish with, knowing what you know now, what would you tell your 10-year-old self, which is really interesting to hear some of those insights.
I'm so curious to hear what your answer to that is.
Yeah.
Do you think your 10-year-old self would have been interested in mindfulness?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess the piece around self-compassion, I think, would be quite foreign to my 10-year-old self, and saying, that this struggle, whatever struggle that I might have been going through, angst or worries, my 10-year-old mind, it might have been, this is hard, and other kids actually have struggles as well, and I've got your back. That would have been just so precious to hear as a 10-year-old. So precious. So good question. Thanks for asking me. I love that we've got people's stories and storytelling, and again, which is why I read Christian's book, because we really connect to people's stories, and it's really important way for us to learn. So, and I love working in this space of parenting and running programs for parents. It's such a privilege to work with parents and to walk alongside them as they navigate certain challenges and share their journey together.
Thanks so much for joining us, Jo. It's been really lovely.
Thanks,
lovely
Belinda.
to speak with you.
Thank you.
It's
been a pleasure.
Thanks. And you didn't want...
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can,
Do you want me to add that in, and then I can put it...
Yeah,
is that okay?
Yeah, because I hadn't put it up since I took it down to take out psychologist, but now I've put it up again.
So, Jo, thank you so much.
I could have talked so much more.
Where can people go to find out more about you or to connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. So, people are very welcome to reach out on LinkedIn.
Beautiful.
And that's where they'll find me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This podcast is produced by Miralinga, thanks to funding from Healthway. I'm Belinda Smith, Manager of Parenting Services at Miralinga. If you'd like to know more, you can visit our website, www.miralinga.org.au, or if you'd like to get in touch, send us an email, parenting@miralinga.org.au, or visit us on socials. Thanks.